Happy holidays, everybody! Thank you to the people who voted on what flavor cake I made this weekend. So obviously, as you know, today we are making a white chocolate peppermint cake. So the cake itself is like a vanilla peppermint cake that has white chocolate chips in it, and it's covered with a peppermint white chocolate buttercream. I'll show you how to make it. Let's go! Okay, so we're gonna start and make the cake first. So I have all my ingredients laid out. I like to get everything set up first so it's nice and easy. We know what we need. So here I just measured out 390 grams or 3 cups of gluten-free flour blend. I used the Bob's Red Mill 1-to-1 baking gluten-free baking flour, which already has xanthan gum in it. So to this, we're just gonna add 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. And then 1.8 teaspoons of baking soda. Perfect. And then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then we're just gonna set this aside and we'll get to it in a little bit. So now we're gonna move on to the wet ingredients. So I'm gonna start with a 3/4 cup of butter, or 1.5 sticks of softened butter. To that, I'm gonna add 1.5 cups or 300 grams of granulated sugar. And then we're gonna go ahead and mix that for probably 3 or 4 minutes. We wanna get it really nice and creamy and all incorporated. So you'll know when it's starting to get done, when it all starts to clump together and sort of stick together into the sides of the bowl. So we'll keep going. Okay, so it's sort of up on the sides of the bowl there, so we can start adding in our eggs. So these are 3 room temperature eggs. If you know that you're gonna be baking this cake, you could take them out a couple hours before you're gonna start. Otherwise, my trick that I always do is putting them in a cup of really hot water for 5 or 10 minutes, and that gets them nice and room temperature. It's just easier to mix everything in and won't clump up your butter. So we're gonna mix in an egg one at a time and mix well in between each addition. And I'm gonna add our second one. Okay. And then our last one. I'm just gonna scrape down the sides of the bowl and then do our final mix. Perfect, so that's really nice and smooth. There's no lumps anywhere. So we can go ahead and move on to our next step. So now we're gonna go in and add our extracts. So I'm gonna add in 2¼ teaspoons of vanilla extract. And then peppermint extract is really strong, so I always go light on the peppermint. You can always add more as you want to the frosting, but I'm gonna keep it pretty light in the cake. You don't want it to taste like toothpaste. So I'm gonna do 1/8 teaspoon and then 1/16 teaspoon. Perfect, and we'll just mix those in. Awesome. All right, now we're gonna start adding in our dry ingredients. So what we're gonna do next is right here, this recipe calls for buttermilk, but since my belly doesn't really like a lot of dairy, so I always substitute almond milk in mine. So 1.5 cups of almond milk. How you can make that like a buttermilk replacement is just by adding 2 teaspoons of lemon juice in your milk. So I always do like 2 teaspoons less of the milk I need and then add that volume in with the lemon juice. So that's been sitting for about 5-10 minutes, get it nice and curdled. So what we're gonna do is add in our dry ingredients alternating with our wet in 3 additions. So I'm gonna add 1/3 of the dry, mix that in. And then we're gonna add in 1/2 of our wet. Go ahead and add in another 1/3 of our dry. The rest of the wet. Do the sides and make sure we have everything. And then finally the rest of our dry. We'll always end and start with dry. And then we'll fold that in until it's just incorporated. Give it one last swirl. And then we're gonna fold in the chocolate chips. Now I'm just gonna add in our white chocolate chips. And we're just gonna fold those in. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna dye one of the middle layer red just to make it look like a little more festive, like a peppermint Christmas cake. So what I'm going to do is put a third of this batter into one of the cake pans, a third into the next one, and then we'll dye the red and add that to the last pan. See if I can do this without spilling everywhere. I'm going to start with, I think it'll be about 470 in each one. You can eyeball it too. I always just like to use a scale so I know that my layers are going to be the exact same height. Okay. Now we're just going to add the red food coloring to this last bit and then put it in our third pan. My buttermilk was a little bit cold, and so you can see it looks like the butter is coming into like a little tiny chunks. That's okay, it'll bake out just fine, but that's why the batter looks a little bit lumpy. And then we'll add just a tiny bit more so it doesn't look too pink. See how close I get with our measurements. Add the final amount here. Okay, that's 470 right there, so I did pretty good. I'm just gonna add the little left in there. Awesome. Okay, those are our 3 cakes. All right, so I have the oven preheated to 350 degrees and we're just gonna pop these in. I'm guessing it'll take between 25 and 35 minutes. I'll let you know when they're out. I will pop them in the oven. Oh, these took about 32 minutes in the oven on 350 to bake. Every oven's a little bit different, so yours might take, I would start checking around 25 minutes and go from there. So these have been sitting in the pan now for about 10 minutes, and now I'm just gonna dunk them out onto this cooling rack here to let them cool all the way. Little chocolate chips. So we'll let these sit here. We don't want to frost them when they're warm at all, so usually I wait about 2 hours until they're totally cool. But I'll be back in a little bit, we can make the frosting. So while the cakes finish cooling, I'm just going to go ahead and start our frosting. So I just have 5 ounces of white chocolate here. This is just the Baker's brand. You can get any white chocolate you want. White chocolate bars melt better than white chocolate chips, so I would recommend doing that. So I'm just going to give these a rough chop. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna melt them in the microwave. We can do a double boil or anything you want. And then we'll let it cool before we add it to our frosting. Okay, so now that it's all chopped, we're just gonna put it in a glass bowl and then stick this in the microwave. I'm just gonna do it in 30 seconds at a time and then stir it in between. Just do it until you can just barely, it's smooth and totally melted. So this, I'm just gonna mix it until it's smooth. And then we don't want to add this to our butter while our butter is cold and this is warm still, because it's just going to melt the butter and then your buttercream frosting will never come together. So we're just going to let this cool for about 15 minutes before we add it to our frosting. To make the frosting, first we're going to add 3 sticks or 1.5 cups of softened butter to our stand mixer. I always use salted butter. If you use unsalted butter, I would add like half a teaspoon of salt to this recipe, but I like the taste better. Now what we're gonna do, we're just gonna turn this mixer on medium-high, and we're gonna mix it for about 4 minutes. We'll scrape down the sides once or twice and just let it get really nice, light and fluffy. Okay. You can see how nice and light and fluffy that got. Perfect. So next we're just gonna add in that white chocolate that we let cool. So it's been about 15, actually it has been 15 minutes. So I'm just gonna add this right in while the mixer is on low. Then I'm just gonna go ahead and turn it back up and we'll let it just all incorporate, and then we'll start adding the powdered sugar. Looks good, doesn't need too long. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and add half of our powdered sugar. So we're gonna do 3 cups total, so I'm gonna do 1.5 cups now, and then the extracts, and then 1.5 cups later. So I'm doing 170 grams, 175 grams, and then we'll do 170 next time. So that's about 1.5 cups. And then we're gonna add in 3/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and then 1/8 teaspoon of peppermint extract to start, and then we'll taste it, and if we want more we can add more. So I'm just gonna get that back mixing. We'll start at low so it doesn't spray all over us, and then we'll go up to medium. And we'll add the rest of our powdered sugar. another 170 grams, another 1.5 cups. Perfect. And we'll do the same thing. Mix it till it's all incorporated. Scrape that down. And then we'll do one more mix, and then we'll do a little taste test and see if we need to adjust any of the flavors. All right, so we'll take a little taste here. I think we can do a tiny bit more. I think I'm gonna add another 1/2 of a teaspoon, so 1/16. Try that. Mix that in. I want the flavor subtle, but not too subtle, so you can't tell what you're eating. All right, so I added that last of that peppermint extract, and I tasted it, and I like the flavor of it now. So we're just gonna get this in a piping bag, and then it's time for the fun part, time to put it all together. Okay, so our cakes are nice and cool. They shouldn't be warm at all to the touch. So the first step to assembling any cake is to level your layers. This will make it much easier to do. I just use a big serrated knife. You can buy levelers and fancy things, but I like this the best. Just try to go straight off the top and all the way through. And then this is the best part, the top. You get to eat it later. It smells like peppermint. And we'll move on to the next one. Okay, and the last one. Ooh, gorgeous. I'm excited to cut this one open. To secure our first cake layer to the board, I am just going to put a little dollop of frosting, spread it out, and then stick one of our cake layers right on there. Try to get it in the middle of the board if we can. Okay, I'm just gonna do a thin layer of buttercream. I'm gonna smooth that out to get any air bubbles or pockets out of there. And then I'm gonna go ahead and top it with our red layer and try to get it nice and even right on the top of the other one. Nice and flat cake is what we're going for. And then we'll add a second layer, frosting. Frosting is so velvety. The white chocolate, I don't know, must have made it really smooth. And then we'll do the same thing, just spread it out. Nice thin even layer. Just gonna add our top layer. I like to do the top one upside down since I know that bottom part is super flat. And then again, just making sure it's nice and level. I like to get down on my knees so I can be really eye level with the cake. Push it down so any air comes out. And we'll add our crumb coat of frosting, which just is essentially a very thin layer of frosting around the entire thing. So then I'm just gonna go in and smooth it out. I like to do it on this side. Sorry, you can't see me. But just get a nice layer. Now that I have that spread out a little bit, I'm just gonna take my bench scraper, the flat side, and we're just gonna go around and get off any excess. And then you can use what you just scraped off to fill in the little gaps that you have left. So I just take it off and go ahead and fill it right back in. Just fill in this top area. And then I'm just gonna go around again. And then if you have any excess on top, you can just pull it in. Pull it in towards the middle. I'm just gonna plop whatever I have left on top and smooth it out. If you have some crumbs in this buttercream, you probably will. That's why this is called the crumb coat, that's fine. This is just gonna be the layer that nobody can see. We'll add more on top. Okay, I'm just gonna clean up the board a little bit. And then once you have a nice even thin layer, just pop this in the refrigerator for 20 minutes and then we can do our final coat. So this is done refrigerating. So it was just in there for about 20 minutes just to set. And now I'm gonna put the final layer of frosting on. So I just like to put a thin layer, just how we did the crumb coat, and then smooth it out. And then we're just gonna smooth it over. Again, you can use any extra that you get just to fill in any gaps that you have. If you have a little couple bubbles, that's okay. We'll just keep going around gently and smoothing it out, and most of them should go away. Okay, then I'm just gonna scrape a little bit on the top. We can add more if we need to. I'm not a huge frosting person personally, so I don't put like a ton in my own. I do for other people, and then they can decide how much they want to eat of it. I'm just gonna pull that in, and then add more where we need to. Just smoothing out the top, going from outside in. Go back around one more time. To get that finishing touch, sometimes you can get your spatula hot, put it under super hot water, and then dry it off and come over and smooth it out. So now that it's warm, it sort of helps smooth everything over. Okay, so now that we have it all smooth, we can do our decoration. So what I'm gonna do, I just chopped up some peppermint kisses, white chocolate peppermint kisses that I'm gonna sprinkle in the middle here. And then around the edges, I'm gonna do these little white Christmas trees that we'll put sprinkles on. So to do that, this is a 4B tip. I'm just gonna make a big one, a big base, and then a smaller, and then smallest. Like a little Christmas tree. And then we'll do it again. All right, so now that those are done, I'm just gonna go ahead and sprinkle these white chocolate peppermint kisses in the middle of the cake. These have such a beautiful, like strong peppermint flavor. It'll really add to the taste of our subtle cake. But you can use whatever candies or sprinkles you feel. Okay, and then I'm just gonna take this little sanding sugar and sprinkle it on top of our Christmas trees. And now I'm just gonna put a little edge around the bottom. So I'm just gonna do little dollops to match the top of the cake. And then we'll sprinkle that. I think we're just gonna have enough frosting. Oh yeah, we'll have plenty. Okay, and then we'll sprinkle that. Voila! Alright, so time to do the best part. We get to eat it. So first we gotta get a slice out. See if we can see that pretty red. So that's it, white chocolate peppermint cake. Perfect for Christmas. If you'd like the full recipe and written instructions, please visit my website, nomadegf.com. Thanks for watching.